Penn's Landing has always been one of the city's great natural treasures. After William Penn landed here in 1682, Philadelphia soon became the most active port in America, and for 2 centuries was the center of the region's cultural, civic, and commercial life. But when City Hall moved from Independence Hall to Center Square at the beginning of the 20th century, the city's nucleus went with it.
The waterfront, which had been a key part of employment for all of the neighborhoods, Queen Village, Society Hill area, was in decline.
In the late 1950s, the city started buying and then demolishing piers and hired architect Robert Geddes to design the first master plan to transform the central waterfront into a tourist attraction.
The piers that remain form the nucleus of clusters of activities to be developed by private builders and institutions.
The newspapers trumpeted the plan as a mile of grandeur for the heart of the harbor. U.S. officials called it one of the most forward-looking port complexes in the world.
It was wonderful, and we thought this would be great to live next to Penn's Landing.
But by the late 1960s, the project had barely begun. It would take years and an act of Congress just to get clear title on the property.
The bed of the river was owned by, I think, the state. The water rights were owned by the federal government. The city had some rights in there.
In the meantime, the city had a real access problem. How would people get from the neighborhoods to the waterfront? The Geddes plan called for demolishing Market Street from Front to Second to make way for a ramp to Penn's Landing, something Ed Bacon considered unthinkable.
So Bacon said, see if you can't minimize the impact on Market Street. And the next thing you know, we had the scissor ramps and the ramps at Penn's Landing.
Mayor James H.J. Tate asked OPDC to manage waterfront development. The organization formed the Penn's Landing Corporation and began work on a new master plan.
And we chose the firm of Murphy, Levy, Worman, and it did a new master plan, which we liked very much.
Murphy, Levy, Worman gave the waterfront a nautical look, adding the Embarcadero railings, a boat basin, and a museum. But the plan also called for private development of hotels, apartments, restaurants, retail shops, and office space. Almost none of it ever happened.
One of the unfortunate things that we didn't control was the timing on building I-95, which got tied up with controversies over depressing and covering it and putting ramps in to get off and on at certain locations.
I-95, built adjacent to Delaware Avenue, doubled the already existing divide between the city and the waterfront. And for 15 years, the highway had no exit ramps to Penn's Landing.
Developers were saying, unless you had improved access, we're not going to go over there.
Finally, in the last year of Mayor Frank Rizzo's administration, OPDC and Penn's Landing Corporation settled on a developer named Jack Blumenfeld.
And it was a darn good design, and he got it financed.
Then, in 1980, Bill Green became mayor.
He just felt that that wasn't good enough, that development, and he kind of just scrapped the whole thing, threw the developer out.
Blumenfeld sued the city and won.
The joke was he was the only developer that ever made money on Penn's Landing.
And OPDC and Penn's Landing Corporation were back to square one. Architect Jerry Cope was hired to help design a new master plan.
The one principal thing we said was that there ought to be a great public space down there, so that whoever built what later, you'd have this great plaza.
We added the amphitheater feature to it. We got Chart House to build a restaurant at the other end of Penn's Landing. Things began to happen. But we wanted much more, of course.
And in 1986, developer Willard Rouse promised to give it to them. The man whose Liberty Place had topped Billy Penn's hat and gave new life to West Market Street now wanted to save the city's waterfront with a $600 million entertainment and retail complex.
Bill Rouse had the best plan, I think.
The project took a scandalous turn when a city council member, plotting with the mob, tried to extort $1 million from Rouse in exchange for city council approval of the project.
You got 3 choices. You pay them, you tell them to go to hell, or you go to the authorities.
Rouse went to authorities, and an FBI sting operation ended the affair. But the development deal also fell through.
That was actually infuriating because we said to him, Bill, don't go forward with the plan unless you're prepared to really do it. He said, oh, yeah, no, I'd never do that to you. Well, he went forward with the plan, and then literally, almost 30 days later, said, I'm out of here. So that was a real blow.
candidly, and I say this critically of myself, it got out of control in its dreams.
Philadelphia, once considered a national leader, was by the late 1980s far behind many other cities like New York, Baltimore, and Washington that had sparkling new waterfronts.
Our dream always to have a very rich developer with the world's greatest architect, whoever that is, to come in and build the perfect place. That never happened.
Mayor Wilson Goode asked Penn's Landing Corporation to hold a national competition for a new master plan. The winner was a group called the Welcome Partnership. And by 1991, the waterfront finally had exit ramps off I-95. But then the real estate market crashed.
It was at a time when we couldn't get financing. Interest rates were through the skies.
In 1997, Mayor Ed Rendell signed a deal with the Simon Property Group, the nation's most prestigious retail developer.
Initially, there was kind of an interesting plan.
The plan was to create an exciting and interactive retail and entertainment complex. Simon would raise the Great Plaza, build a new home for the Please Touch Museum, and create a landing station for an aerial tram to the Camden waterfront.
The Simon plan, I think we were sold at snake oil salesmen.
The more they got into it, anything exciting or attractive started to be, well, one week we'd go to a meeting and this would be removed, the next week we'd go to a meeting and that would be removed.
And it was like, wait a second, you promised this great interactive retail experience, where's the interactive? And it became more and more a traditional shopping center.
By 2002, the much-hyped Riverside Shopping Mall was dead. Simon Property Group became the sixth major developer to exit Penn's Landing since 1973. Another attempt to select a developer during the first term of the John Street administration not only failed, it led to another conviction.
For 30 years, the city's essentially beat its head against the same wall at Penn's Landing, which is go to a developer and have them decide what they think they'd like to do with that site, and then those grandiose plans always fail.
I think the emphasis had always been on that 13-acre site and figuring if we build something there that's attractive, everything else will come. I think we've been proven wrong.
Well, the waterfront is sort of happening by accident and serendipity at this point.
What happens today is developer-driven. It is not city planning, vision-driven. We may be missing some opportunities to make it an even more desirable place in which to live, work, etc.
We're getting high-rise buildings built and blocking off access to the waterfront, and there is no public plan for a continuous public access and trail as they are doing in Manhattan, as they're doing in other cities.
And then we have the potential for casino gambling, which may, depending on the State Gaming Commission, become a part of the footprint of the Delaware Avenue Columbus Boulevard corridor.
We've used our waterfronts as a way to reinvent our whole city.
In the fall of 2005, OPDC, now CPDC, invited Vancouver's planning director to explore how Philadelphia might do the same.
Waterfronts should be a wonderful place to live. It should also be a place where we really maximize the public amenities. So all along our waterfront we have a continuous waterfront walkway and bikeway system. It creates a new image for your city.
What we'd really like to do is to have the city take a deep breath and do what the public wants, which is to do a comprehensive plan for the entire Philadelphia waterfront instead of focusing on this one particular sliver of land.
In October 2006, Mayor Street, nearing his 8th and final year in office, decided to do just that, signing an executive order to create a master plan for the riverfront in partnership with Penn Praxis and establishing a 45-member community-based advisory commission.
We will not let this process fail because we do not give it the attention that it needs to make sure that it has the resources necessary to come up with a viable plan, a plan that we all can be proud of and a plan that we can all buy into.
At least from the Frankfort Avenue, Delaware Avenue intersection, and as far south as Oregon Avenue. We want the river to be a place where people are invited to come to, whether you live there or just to visit.